Nazir Daf Chav Gimel begins with a Mishnah we have just quoted about a woman who thinks she's a Nazir but she's really not. This will take us into Gemaras, which are, for the most part, Agadata, discussing situations in which people either think they're over an Isser and they're not, or are over an Isser and they think they aren't. And the Gemara will discuss the severity of Chait in general. So let's begin the Mishnah. Mishnah we've just seen. If a woman made a vow of Naziris and her husband, unbeknownst to her, was made for it, but she goes ahead and she drinks wine and she's matami to mesim. So if the husband was not made for it, the Mishnah says first, she gets malchus. If the husband was made for it, even though she wasn't aware of it, she doesn't get malchus. According to the Tanakama, she doesn't get malchus at all. According to Yehuda, she does get malchus mardas. That is rebellious lashes for intending to violate the halacha. Okay, the Gemara now begins with the Brisa. Brisa quotes the pasuk in the halachos of Nidarim. It says, "Isha hafiram v'Hashem yislach, that a woman requires kapara. This is referring to, says the Brisa, a woman whose husband was made for her neder, but she was not aware of it. She requires an atonement because she tried or intended to violate an Isser, she just happened to not violate an Isser. Says Rabbi Akiva, when he used to get to this pasuk, he would cry. He said, think about it, this lady thought she was doing this, but she really wasn't, but still she needs a kapara, she needs an atonement and a forgiveness. Somebody who intends to do an Isser, he intends to eat pig meat, and he actually ends up eating the pig meat, certainly he requires a kapara. Now the Gemara quotes another similar statement. There is a pasuk that says, "V'lo yada v'ashem v'nasa aveinoi," that somebody who didn't realize he was doing an Isser, what he really was. So we found out later that it was at least a suffix. So he has to bring a carbon, or possibly an asham toloi if he wasn't sure. So here we say the same thing. Someone who thought he was doing something mutter, but he was really doing something asur, requires a kapara. Certainly somebody who was planning to do something asur and actually did something asur, he intended to eat chaylev and he really ate chaylev, certainly he requires a kapara. Now the Gemara's third statement comes from Isi ben Yehuda. According to the Rashi, he's quoting a different pasuk here, very similar thing, but he says if he had in front of him two pieces of meat, one was mutter, one was aser, one was chaylev, one was shuman, and he thought he was eating the shuman, he was actually eating the chaylev. So there, if he requires kapara, certainly somebody who thought he was eating the chaylev and he was really eating the chaylev does require kapara. So Gemara says, why do I need these three things? Why do I need three psukim to tell me that if you thought if there was something you were not sure of or something you were wrong about, it requires kapara? Why do I need all of those? So much as you need each of them. In the case of the lady, she thought she was doing an avera, but it turns out she wasn't doing anything. So it's a chiddush. Even though she didn't do anything wrong, she still requires kapara just for thinking. The second case over there, she requires or he or whoever it is who made the neder or thought he was eating something mutter, over there you require kapara where there actually is isser. So you have to also mention that case where the isser actually was done, because over there she didn't even intend to do anything. There was no intent to do an isser, still she requires a kapara for having actually performed an isser. If you only would have said that where isser actually was done, I wouldn't know that any kapara is required in a case where an isser actually was not done just for intending to. If I would have said these, I would not have known the third case where you actually had kavua isurim in front of you. But in the case where it's actually in front of you, you had two pieces, one was mutter, one was asr, and you ate one of them, I may think kapara is not enough there because you actually have the isur present in front of you. Therefore comes to teach me that kapara there is enough. On this note, the Gemara now goes looking for the meaning of the pasuk, Yisharim darchi Hashem, straight are the ways of Hashem, and tzadikim yelchu ba. Tzadikim, righteous ones, will walk in it, uposhim yikashlu ba, but sinners will trip on it. How is it possible that the same path will be righteous for the tzadikim and sinful for the rishayim? So the Gemara tries three attempts to give an example as to how this might be. The Gemara's first example is Rabbi Yechanan, who says if you have two people eating a carbon Pesach, one eats it l'shem mitzvah in order to do the mitzvah, the other one eats it because he wants to be full, he wants to fill his stomach with it. So the one who eats it l'shem mitzvah is mekayim the mitzvah, and the one he is tzadikim yelchu ba, and the one who just eats it because he's hungry or because he wants to stuff himself, he's poishim yikashlu ba. So Rish Lakish said this is not the right pshat, because in this pshat, the one who eats the l'shem aveira didn't do an aveira. He's not yetz the mitzvah korban Pesach maybe. Rish Lakish even says it's not mitzvah min mufchar, it's not preferable, but he's still yetz the mitzvah of korban Pesach. You can't call it l'shem yikashlu ba. So Rish Lakish says the right pshat is somebody who has two women with him in the bed. One is his wife and one is his sister. and then he mixes them up. So the one who ends up with his wife did a mitzvah, the one who ends up with his sister did an avera. So that's the same action could be for the Rishayim avera, and for the tzaddikim mitzvah. So Gemara rejects this also because Gemara says it's not the same action. When one he was with his wife and one he was with his sister. So it's two different things. So it's not the same thing. That's both mitzvah and an avera depending who they are. So Gemara therefore says it's for the daughters of light. Rav Yechanan says the daughters of light who were together with their father, which is ostensibly an avera, but for them thought they were doing the right thing. They thought they were trying to repopulate the world, which they thought was no other way of it happening. So for them it was a mitzvah. They were mechav l'shem shemayim. But for light, who was mechav l'shem avera, it was an avera. So there you have the same action and two different people that are doing it. One is tzaddikim yelchuba, one is rishayim mikal shluba. So Gemara asks, but how do you know that light was mechav l'shem avera? Maybe light was l'shem mitzvah also. So Gemara says, Vidarshan in the pasuk where light chose to go to the land of Siddim, every phrase in that pasuk links to another pasuk discussing an avera. It says Vayisa light. That's linked to Vatisa Eshes Adinav Es Eineha when Eshes Potiphar was trying to entice Yosef to do an avera. Then it says Es Einav. That's linked to Yishar Hi Be'enai when Shimshon was trying to take the Lila for a wife. It says Vayar. That's linked to Vayar Isa Shchem and Chamar when Shchem wanted to do an avera with Bas Yaakov. It's called Kikar Yarden is the next phrase that links to Ki Ba'ad Ishazona Ad Kikar Lechem, clearly referring to an avera there. Next it says Kikula Mashke, so that links to a pasuk. It says Elcha Charei Mahavai Noisnei Lachmi Umemri Tzimri Ufishti Shmani Vishiku Yoi Vishiku Voi. So there, that's talking about Mashke also, and that is in Hosea, specifically referring to an Isha Zona. So you see, every phrase here is linking or hinting at Znus and Avera, and that's what Lloyd had in mind. So Gemara asks, but he was forced. He was not aware. He was drunk. What was he supposed to do about it? So Gemara says the reason that there are dots on the vav in the Sefer Torah where it says V'lo yada b'shechva uvekuma, so the vekuma has the dots on it because the first time when she lay down with him he didn't know, but uvekuma, when she stood up, then he did know. So Gemara says, but then it was too late. What was he supposed to do? He should not have drunk again the next night. He should not have got himself in that situation again since he knew what had happened. The Gemara now continues discussing the situation with Light and his daughters, and it also talk about other situations of Aveira Lishma, an Aveira that's done for the right reasons. So Rava says a drasha on the pasuk, Ach nifsha mikiryas oiz, someone who sinned from the strong city, Umidyanim kivriach armain, and it creates arguments like a strong brick, or a strong lock that locks the gate of the palace. What is it referring to? So Ach nifsha mikiryas oiv is a brother who sinned from the strong city. That's Light, who left Avram, who's called the strong city because he could protect those who were near him, but Light left. Midyanim Kavriach Armain is as a result of that, he ended up in a situation of arguments, strong arguments between Yisrael and Amin Umayav, his children, like it says, his children Amin and Umayav cannot marry into Klal Yisrael. Another similar drasha from a pasuk in Mishnah that says Latavi Vakish Nifrad Bechol Toshia Yizgala, for his own desires, the one who separated had in mind. That refers to Light, who separated because he wanted to go fulfill his taivas in Siddim. And Bechol Toshia Yizgala, Toshia refers to the Torah. The Gemara says this is all revealed in the Torah, that in every shul and Beis Medrash they learn Amin Umayav Asurin Versurin Israelam, any descendant from that relationship of Amin Umayav who were born from Light's relationship with his daughters are forbidden forever to come into Klal Yisrael. Then the Gemara talks about Znus, which is L'Shem Shemayim, and Znus, which is L'Shem Aveira. So Ula says that Tamar, who did a Znus with Yehuda, had a schus, and kings and Nevi'im came out from her, Yeshaya Navi, and all the kings of Malchus Beis David. Mal Zimri, who did a Ma'aseh Aveira with Cosby, caused a tremendous plague in Klal Yisrael, which killed many tens of thousands of people. It says Menachem bar Yitzchak, an Aveira that is performed Lishma for the sake of Shemaim is better than a mitzvah that's done Shalei Lishma. Somebody asks, is anything wrong with a mitzvah Shalei Lishma? Rav Yehuda says in the name of Rav, a person should always do a mitzvah, even if it's not Lishma, even if the intentions aren't perfect, because that'll bring him to do it Lishma. So Gemara says, no, okay, so an Aveira that's done Lishma is as good as a mitzvah, is as good as a mitzvah Shalei Lishma. An example of an Aveira Lishma is Yael, who was the wife of Chever HaKeni, who invited Sisera into her tent and he was boel her 7 be'ilos in order that she should be able to kill him. That's why she invited him. So about her it says, Minashim ba'ohel teveirach. Nashim ba'ohel refers to Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah, so she is blessed even greater than them for this action. So the Gemara says that the 7 be'ilos are hinted at in the psukim, like it says, Bein ragleh kara nafal shachav, Bein ragleh kara nafal, Ba'asher kara sham nafal. 7 words referring to 7 be'ilos. So Gemara asks, but she had hana from that be'ilah, so why do we say it's shalei l'shma? So Gemara answers, that was not a hana for her, since she's a tzadika. She didn't have any hana from it, because the good of the Rishayim is bad for the tzadikim, like you find by Lavan, where Hashem told Lavan not to talk to Yaakov mitoiv ad ra. He shouldn't talk to him about bad, you understand, but why couldn't he say good things? Because anything which Lavan considers good would be bad for Yaakov. So in the same vein, Yael didn't get any real hana from that be'ilah. So now the Gemara goes back to the concept of learning Torah Shlei Lishma. So Yehuda says in the Rav, you should always learn or do mitzvah Shlei Lishma because it will bring to Lishma. So the Gemara says, you see that from the karbanos brought by Balak in order to curse Klal Yisrael. In that schos of those 42 karbanos that he brought, he got Rus. Rus was a descendant of Balak, like Rabbi Yisrael Chanina says. She was the daughter of the son of Egloin, king of Moav, who was descended from Balak, king of Moav. Next says Rabbi Chia bar Abba named Rabbi Yechanan. How do you know that Kadosh Baruch Hu does not withhold any reward even for the slightest mitzvah? So like it says that the older daughter of light named her son with a more explicit name referring to the Aveira than the younger daughter did. She called him Moav, from my father, which is explicitly refers to the Aveira that was performed. Well, the younger daughter called him Amoin, from my people, which is a bit more tzenua. So in that tzchus of that slight cleanliness of language, the people of Amoin were protected. And the reason is, if you look in the psukim which discusses Klal Yisrael's commandment not to start a war with them, so about Moav it says, Al tatzar as Moav, don't surround Moav, Al tiskar ba mechama, and don't start up with them a war. But it implies that you could cause them suffering of other sorts. But about Ammon it says, Al titzureim, don't surround them, Al tisgar bam, and don't antagonize them at all, even not to make a war, don't cause them any tsar at all. Alright, now more about Light. Rav Chia bar Avin said, name Rav Yeshua ben Karcha, that a person should always be the first one to do a mitzvah, because the daughters of Light both thought they were doing a mitzvah, and the one who went first got a extra zchus, that she had kings in Yisrael descend from her 4 generations earlier, because her descendants were Oved, Yishai, David, and Shloimeh, all who came from her. Well, from Ammon you only had Rechavam, who came 4 generations after the first one here. Rechavam was descended from Nama ha'Ammonis, from Ammon, and he was after Shloimeh.